You will. You'll do great. You'll do great. I'm looking forward to this. All right,
Me
awesome.
too.
We are live on LinkedIn. Welcome everybody. I'm sure we usually try to leave a minute or two for people to start to filter in. This has been the most highly anticipated appearance that I think we've ever had. We've got close to 200 people that registered to join us here this morning, and I think that has more to do with you, Cheyanne, than it does with me. So you're our guest of honor today, and very excited to have you here, and very excited that we're going to have this conversation about what HR teams can do heading into this new year, into 2026. It's always a good time to, anytime you have the new year and all that, it's always a good time to work on your resolutions and your goal setting
Yeah.
and kind of your larger vision of what you want to accomplish here in the next 12 months. And so we'll certainly cover some of that, and as advertised, we'll talk about some of the finer points of things that are taking place within HR, as it relates to regulations and different things, all the boring stuff too. But we'll also talk about some of the exciting stuff that we've been able to see, and where when we did our pre-webinar meeting, last month,
Yeah.
where we talked a little bit about AI and how you've seen
Yes.
teams successfully use AI to really just to really I just leverage their time and their talent and do all the things that you need to do, because as we've seen over the years, and as I don't need to tell you or probably anybody else on this in this audience today, there's a lot that gets heaped on HR's plate, right? That there's a lot that you're responsible for. It's that old thing of spinning plates, right? You've got all these spinning plates. You're juggling a lot of different things, and meanwhile trying to. I hate the term putting out fires, but you've got people coming into your office and they've got concerns, they've got problems, they've got
Yes.
things that they need your assistance with, right? And that's why I think you're so well suited for that kind of position, and I think a lot of the people in the audience here are too. So, anyways, so with that, we're at three after. I'll go ahead and introduce my guest here, Cheyanne Schaefer. She needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyways. She has her own. Would you say fractional HR consulting firm, or how would you tell us about Cascade HR? Give yourself more of an introduction than I can do.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris. And I'm excited to be here. And I am very humbled and in awe that there is so many people wanting to hear what we have to say. And I hope that this entire session is found to be really helpful and insightful. And I just love to share knowledge and ideas. So I'm excited to be here. With Cascade HR, I like to describe it more as a in-house type feel partnership with small businesses specifically. And so it does have fractional HR support, but it also brings in strategic HR, trust, accountability, and that partnership approach to helping small businesses actually have the benefit of what larger organizations typically have from an HR team. And that's the feeling that our clients get from working with us, is they feel like they actually have a partner. And that's what I'm excited to do. Anyone that's worked with me, I hope, would all say that I'm very big on helping other people, and I view my success as the success of those around me and however I can help support them. And I think that's what lives through Cascade HR.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. That kind of that servant leadership is kind of the first thing that
Yes.
pops in my head to that. So, no, I absolutely love that. And yeah, you're right. And I can say the same for myself. As my any amount of success that I've experienced has all been a result of the clients that we work with and the team that I've put together around me. It really has is
100%.
very little to do with me. And
Yeah.
no, I think I
That's how I
love.
feel too.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So yeah, so the first, just kind of, opening question I guess I would have, which kind of dovetails off of I think that explanation of what Cascade HR is what do you think the biggest misconception is that you see small or maybe mid-sized companies that are holding on to about HR in general?
Yeah, I love this question. And I actually made an Instagram reel that was trending this last month that I think answers this question really well. I hear time and time again from business owners, oh, I'm not quite big enough to need HR yet. When I get to 25 or when I get to 50 employees, then I'll worry about that. And usually by that time, there's already been enough happening that you are then in a more reactive state of correcting and rebuilding and getting the company to a space where you can actually really operate at a strategic level, versus the companies that from the get-go want to surround themselves with good bookkeepers, accounting, HR, IT. Like those functions exist in corporations because they're so important. And working with a smaller organization that can bring in that support to a level that matches the small businesses is so powerful. And it helps these businesses really get ahead. And I think, that's the most common misconception that I hear, though, is like, oh, I can wait. And they wait until there's a lawsuit, or they wait until there's a complaint, or there's an audit. And then it's both more costly and just more painful.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Anytime you're being reactive rather than, having somebody help you scale is
Yeah.
kind of, is kind of what I hear there too, is that, you want to get to that level where you have that 20 or 25 employees or what have you. And maybe the difference is bringing in some of that fractional outside help, whether it's, HR or bookkeeping or a number of other things. But, yeah, no, I think that's an important point. Yeah, for sure. And look, as somebody who runs a business and you as well too, I think you probably see that as well. It's like, well, when we get to this revenue level, then we'll hire somebody for that position. And anytime you kind of put your faith in and just say, hey, look, we just need to do this so we can get to that next goal. We need to look at doing that. So um,
Exactly.
yeah, no, I think that's I think that's a really good point that you make. So another question I guess I have kind of along that same line is that, we always hear about how fast things are changing in HR. And I kind of alluded to it just a couple of minutes ago, just with what we've seen, even just in the last 4, 5, 6 years now.
Yeah.
But it is there as I mentioned, there are a lot of things that get piled up on your already full plate. So from where you sit every day, what's actually changing? What are those changes that are actually taking place, and what's just noise?
Yeah. I think what's actually happening is the expectation for accountability with businesses has shifted. And I think in general, we live in a world where there's a lot of different intense climates, political climates, and whatnot, that people have more of a voice than they've ever had because of technology and social media and these different outlets. And they expect businesses to be held to a higher standard, not only because of the technology that exists, but because laws continue to evolve as well. In one of my classes, I actually talk about why HR exists today, and it really comes from even the 1800s. If you look back when there was child labor and the labor movement then happened, and all these things took place, and unions were formed, and no one had an HR department then. But HR was born from those laws and from those things that evolved. And that's what's continuing to happen. And I think people like try to say, oh, it's a trend or whatever. But it's really the future of HR and business is to be able to practice transparency and to be able to hold yourselves accountable for being at that higher level. And there's so many amazing businesses that are already doing that. And they are profitable, they are growing, they are experiencing, very positive business outcomes because they are leading with those values and they are being transparent and they're communicating with people. And I think that's one of the areas that people also want to get to, but then they might in HR face a roadblock with senior leadership if there's not alignment there. I hear it all the time from HR professionals that are still fighting for that seat at the table. And
Mm.
I think that's where it's turning. the view on that from I'm fighting for the seat at the table to I already need to be at this level and I'm just going to work on having these conversations where I'm able to, and I'm going to make positive change where I can. And if I can't get anywhere, then I'm going to align myself with a business that will allow me to deliver that type of care. Um, if that's something that really leads true to someone's heart, because sometimes the only way for change to happen is for you to shift and for you to move. And if you're not getting anywhere doing the same thing, I say back up and try something completely different, right?
Yeah.
See how you can really shift that there.
Yeah, I love that, and I forgot to even mention the fact that you teach now too. On top of doing all these other things,
Yeah.
you're teaching over at TCC. So, anyways, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but I think that the audience would like to hear probably how that came about. And again, this isn't so, folks. This is not part of. I'm just so curious about this. I'm so impressed by that. I think that's just the coolest thing. But talk to
Yeah.
us a little bit about that for a second, and then we'll shift gears.
Yeah. Teaching at TCC is absolutely amazing. I have the honor of teaching, of course, HR classes.
Yes, yeah,
Big surprise. Yeah. And so I teach several HR classes from the 100 level to the 400 level. And I actually have a group of students that they're a cohort, and all year they take a variety of classes from me. And in their senior capstone, they actually meet with local businesses and build an internship program for that business. And the company at that point can then decide if they want to move forward or not. There's no pressure. We really bring on that partner approach. But I have found that teaching is one of the most fun areas of my life. I love doing it. And it came about because of my involvement with SHRM, which is also a big part of my life. Currently, the president for the Washington State SHRM Council. And before that, I also served the local South Puget Sound SHRM board. I was with them for 5 years. And Chris, that's actually where I originally met you over 10 years ago.
yeah. I know it's been a minute. That's okay. We
It's
don't
been
need
a
to do
minute.
all this math, but yes, we have known each
Yeah.
other that long. So yeah, that's right. That's right. That yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that's where for HR professionals too, a lot of times your role inside of your company can be very isolating. And I think it is so helpful to network and lean into other HR folks, because I have found that HR professionals in general are very welcoming. They want to help each other, they want to be supportive, and the majority of us are all experiencing the same challenges. And we can forget that other people are going through that because often in HR, internally within your own company, you can't talk about it to most
Right.
people,
Yeah.
right? But go to the SHRM event, go to a networking event, find another HR person, and you'll have a great conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can
Yeah.
swap, war stories over, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Um, no, well, thank you for sharing that because yeah, I do think that's important. And so anybody who's listening here, if you're looking for an intern, if you're looking for a generalist, look no further than Cheyanne and some of her students. Yeah, because those are going to be people that are very well trained, and are going to be they're going to start to fill these positions in the in the not too distant future. So well, cool. Well, again, thank you for sharing that and just indulging us there for a minute. All right, let's get back to our regular scheduled stuff. So now let's get into some of the really fun stuff. Let's talk about
Yeah.
compliance
Yes.
and risk. Right. So yeah, we've set all this up, and now we're gonna knock it down. So one of the things that came up, and actually this is kind of top of mind for me because I'm going through this with a client right now. Um, there's some rules around 1099s that are
Yes.
getting a lot more attention at the moment. So where do you see companies that are crossing the line where they're maybe 1099ing somebody that should be a W-2, or how do you walk that tightrope?
Yeah, Chris, this is such a great question, and it is an area that I continually see businesses making mistakes. Yeah, I think during our last conversation, I mentioned that in 2023, L and I shifted a lot of the rulings around what is actually a contract worker versus an employee.
Hmm.
And now, as we're heading into 2026, those rulings have been around, they've been more established, and L and I has been working to, audit more businesses and find out where businesses are making those classifications incorrectly. L&I is super employer friendly. They are wonderful to work with if you want to work with them and you're trying to figure it out and do the right thing. I will say that I've worked with quite a few people at the local L&I office, and I've done many audits now, and it's always a great experience if you're leading with that positive intention. But the reason for it is because so many employers have not been classifying people correctly as an employee. And I
Mm.
think the biggest, there's a whole worksheet that you can go through if you really want to get into it. But the simplified way of putting it comes down to control. So if the business is controlling where the person's going, the type of work they're doing, if you're providing equipment, if you're giving performance and feedback, if you're determining how much you're paying that person and you're really leading the charge there, if you are making an offer letter, that is not a contract worker. An independent 1099 contract worker, they are likely going to have their own pricing in mind. They are likely offering this service to more than one business. Ideally, they have a business location of their own. They even have a business license in a perfect world. And I personally believe that over the next decade, L&I may even require that 1099 workers have that business license or have more established rulings in that way, because that's kind
Yeah.
of where it's shifting. And I think a lot of um, I actually see the biggest problem coming from the worker, because a lot of folks that I've worked with, they want to be a 1099 employee, but
Hmm.
then they're doing work of an employee, not a 1099 worker, right? And so the music industry with choirs and different types of industries where they have people that are traditionally 1099s, it's starting to blend into, oh, that's an employee. So they should be getting paid as an employee. They should be getting sick leave. They should be able to qualify for PFML, depending on how many hours they're working and all of those things. And so I think that's probably the biggest area that I see the confusion.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense, and that a lot of what you're saying tracks with what I've seen over the years with with clients of ours in the past and things like
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting call out too to see kind of where things are going, and it doesn't, it sounds like there's nothing like that's pending or coming and at any there's no time frame around that, but that they may require people to if you're 1099 you got to have your own business license or maybe have your own LLC or something, or those types of things. And then yeah, I think if that's the case, then all right, yeah, this truly is a 1099 and that
Yeah.
type of thing. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
anyways,
I
yeah,
could
it's
see
been
it moving that way.
yeah. So no, that's
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting call out. So are there, just in terms of, maybe kind of shifting away just specifically from that 1099 stuff, um, what other, small missteps do you see employers making that could potentially become expensive problems if they're not addressed?
Yeah. I think just meal periods and meal breaks are a big area that there has been a lot of confusion on, especially as exemption statuses change. I
Mm,
see it time and time again where, an employee will be misclassified. I think a lot of times there's some confusion around, oh, well, they're salaried, so they're exempt. But that's not the truth. You can have someone that technically has a salary, but doesn't classify as an exempt employee. And that's one thing, where it's like, oh, well, they don't want to take their lunch. They want to work through, and I have these conversations with employees too, where they're like, well, I'm busy. I just want to keep going. And it's like, well, that's great, but there's the law and there's compliance, and we do need you to take a break unless there's a justified business reason that you need a meal period waiver. There's some ways to work around that, but in general, if you're able to, you need to be taking a break. And the majority of employees are likely going to be non-exempt. The idea of exemption is that those are your managers, those are your higher paid, you know, your folks that are working more standard. You know, the idea is they're working 40 hours a week, but we all know usually an exempt employee, 50 hours is a light week.
Right, right. Yeah.
Right, right. So I think that is an area that I have heard. I don't have any factual evidence of it, but I have heard from colleagues that I talk with that they have been experiencing more audits around meal periods. And so I think the word out there on the street, I guess you could say, is that is an area that L&I and that is kind of cracking down on businesses in Washington.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was this was several years ago, long before GBS and all of that. I was working for a
Yeah,
company, and this was a company that was based out of California, and they had some pretty strict laws around that. So I got in trouble
yeah,
because I was working through lunch, and they basically told me, "Hey, you need to, you don't have to eat. Like I can't force you to do that, but you have to take an hour off during the middle of the day."
yeah,
And so, anyways, I thought that was kind of strange, but at the same time, I was like, "All right, well, I guess." Ultimately it was for my own kind of mental and physical health and that type of thing.
right,
And then I found when I was doing that, then the second half of my day would be far more productive because otherwise your battery drains and you get to
exactly.
3:30, 4 o'clock, and you're like, just trying to
Yeah,
trying to make it through. So
yeah,
anyhow, so no, I can appreciate that. I think it's one of these things that's perhaps for people's, and I did not expect that answer, but it's always these little things like that, that you wouldn't necessarily think of, but no, I love it. I think it's a great call out. So
yeah. Well, and I
another thing
think
you go
that's a
ahead.
really great point, Chris, is it is those little things because I think often oh, we know what the law is. We looked at it, we're good, we have it in our handbook. And so you kind of set it and forget it, and then you're so busy with everything else that
Hmm.
that's where those mistakes come in. So a lot of times just revisiting the foundations is so helpful. And I always encourage HR folks, look at those at minimum once a year. Like revisit, are your job descriptions accurate? Are your break policies actually being followed? Are classifications actually accurate based on the new wages and all those things? But we get so busy we forget to do it.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
So you've mentioned exemptions a couple of times, and not exempt and non-exempt employees, and
yeah,
so some of these exemption thresholds are going to be changing here in Washington, and I think a few other states across the country as well. Um, why is can we just focus on the exemption thresholds? Why is that a blind spot, and what's the risk if that's not handled properly?
yeah, definitely. So the exemption threshold has been increasing the last several years. And if you just even Google Washington state salary exemption threshold, you'll be able to find the chart of what they're going to be making the rate for the predicted future. Um, and I think the reason that people are missing it is because it went decades without being updated. It
Mm,
was set and forget. It used to be only like 35,000 a year, and now it's up to 80,000. So it's a huge difference over the last decade that has shifted. And I think a lot of times people don't realize the hourly equivalent of how much $80,000 really is. They're like, oh, that person's paid pretty well. They have a nice schedule. They're good. They're happy because the employee's not asking either. And so it just gets missed. Um,
mm,
yeah. And so that's one area that I've noticed that when I'm going in and I'm auditing compensation and I'm doing a compensation analysis for a business, that they've even been told by their accountant that that's good. Um, and that's where
mm.
it's nice to remember that there are professionals that don't always know the payroll law for Washington, especially if you're outsourcing your accounting or anything like that. So it affects small businesses, as I think, more than your larger groups. A lot of larger companies have in-house HR, in-house accounting that are very familiar with local laws, but always something to pay attention to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I think there's very few people that push back or question a lot of times their CPA or whoever they're whoever's doing their books and that type of thing. But no, that's an important call out because they also have all kinds of there's new tax laws that come out every year, and how can they
Exactly.
really understand the nuances of how this affects you in a specific situation or your business or that type
Yeah,
of thing. So yeah, trust but verify, right? That's
exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of
um,
CPAs are focused more on tax strategy than
yeah.
your HR compliance.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
And great. That's
Right.
their
That's
area
where
of
we want them to
expertise.
be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
um yeah, okay. All right. Well, let's unless you want to add anything else about uh compliance or anything, we can shift gears and talk about something that's maybe a little bit more exciting and
Yeah.
has its own unique challenges from one year to the next, but um I wanted to talk a little bit around hiring, retention, and those types of things, and some of the things that we've seen over the last, gosh, probably 18 months. It's interesting how quickly how quickly the tide shifts, I guess, from being a very candidate friendly environment where people have tons of opportunities, tons of jobs to choose from,
Yeah.
and are being recruited to to come over to companies and things like that, to then where I think kind of where we're at now, and you probably have more insight on this, but where it's a more employer friendly climate where there's not as many jobs out there, and so employers in that kind of situation can be far more use more due diligence or be far more choosy about who they do end up filling for open roles that they may have. Um, so yeah, what would you say? How I've kind of framed that, but what would you say? Where are we at in that cycle of tides right now? I guess, if you will.
Yeah. I think hiring, it reminds me a lot, and I'm sure people on this call will relate. It reminds me of the real estate market, supply and demand,
Yep,
right?
I love it.
And it
Yeah,
goes from being an employer to an employee market and back and forth, and it just kind of swings.
yeah,
I see it always evolving. And I think the most important thing employers can do is when it is an employer market and you have a ton of people to pick from, remember that that is not always going to be the case. And the way you treat people, the way you respond to them, the experience you give them, even when you have a ton of people to pick from and you don't think it's as important, they are going to remember the experience they've had with you. And when times become tough to find employees, you want every candidate that's come in to have a good experience where they're going to talk highly of your business and they're going to encourage people to apply or even watch for that role and be willing to leave their current job to come to your place of work because of the experience they had, even when the market was not in their favor, right? And I think often, I've been recruiting for so long. I remember I used to be able to host an event and there would be like 200 candidates coming in and I would just interview speed rounds all day. I could hire mass amounts of people in one day. And then I also got into the hiring mode where you would put up a job post, you would push out an event and it'd be crickets.
yeah.
It was like pulling teeth, right? So difficult. And I learned through that process how important it is to give every candidate a positive experience and build up your talent pool. Find ways to continue to connect with people, even when you don't move forward with them, because you never know down the road when that is going to be the right choice and that is going to have alignment. Um, I also have found that there's usually so many great candidates. Like, especially lately, I have had a hard time picking only one person. And it's like, can we figure out in our budget how we can bring on this one more? Like, it's so hard to pick, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think candidates sometimes think that if they're not chosen, it's because they weren't the best. And while in some ways there's truth behind that, I think it's also important for candidates to remember it's not just about that, though. There's so many other things at play. And just because you weren't selected doesn't mean you're not amazing. It doesn't mean that you're not great and you have things to offer. The timing just wasn't there.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think it's so hard as a candidate to stay positive during that process. I do coaching with a number of different folks while they're looking for jobs. And I've seen really great professionals in the last year. It takes them over 6 months to land something.
Yeah.
And, they're amazing. It has nothing to do with them not having enough. It's just the way that it sometimes works. And so trying to
Yeah.
stay positive and remember like trust and timing and the plan, just stay positive, stay at it, and it will work out however it's meant to happen?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've seen that firsthand too.
Yeah.
There's somebody I know that comes to mind who, was a top hospital administrator and has worked on finance and in
Yeah.
operations and has his MBA and all this, and he's been out of a job for over 12 months now. And
Yeah.
granted, he's a little bit more narrow in what his search is, but still, I know it's been frustrating. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but we are, as you mentioned, right? I love the analogy of the real estate market too, because I think that's something that, most of us
Yes.
can relate to and have seen. If you've, been around for any period of time, you've seen both sides of that. So, and I think it's the same thing in the hiring market. So,
Yeah.
um,
I love
uh,
that.
yeah, no, so I love that answer. So as far as that gives me a good idea around the hiring and the recruiting and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about retention, because that's
Mhm.
obviously an important key component too. Is hey, the best thing to do is keep the people that you've already got, right? Rather than have to go out and chase somebody down and find somebody else to fill a role. So what's maybe one or two HR policies or practices that you wish more companies would revisit because it's quietly potentially hurting their employee morale or employee performance?
Yeah. So the first one that comes to mind is probably not something new that people have never heard of. It's just the idea behind flexible working schedules
Mm,
and the expectations around people being in their seat versus doing their job. I think I still see it a lot where they're pushing for, oh, you need to be in the office this many days, this much time per week. This is the requirement. But what's not being talked about is the performance and the actual outcome of that person and that role. And a lot of times in business and in our lives, we have weeks where we're able to be in person more, and then we have weeks where maybe there's more going on, and being able to have flexibility allows you to do that.
mm,
And I have employers say, well, but, I have to set parameters around that to hold people accountable. It's like, yes, that's great. We do need to be able to hold people accountable, and very clear guidelines around that is important. Um, but how can you also get creative and build trust and then hold people accountable for their performance if they're not actually meeting performance? Because oftentimes, when someone's not physically coming in, the issue isn't them not being there, it's disengagement or
mm.
it's lack of meeting, calendar invites and responding to emails. It's usually more, but it becomes really easy to just say it's because they're not in the office. Um, and the other thing that I've seen is so many senior leadership and managers, they're often the ones I have the biggest trouble with getting them to come in. And so there's also this conception that it's like, oh, it's younger employees, they don't want to come in. I see the exact opposite. I see younger professionals hungry for mentorship, hungry to learn. They want to come in, and then they come in and senior leadership's not there. And they're like, okay, so I'm required to be here 4 days a week, but who am I supposed to talk to? Right.
Yeah,
Um, and so
that's
that's
interesting.
where just remembering to whatever policies you want to build out, don't do it because it sounds good. Do it because it's aligned with the way that you actually want the culture of your company to be lived. Right.
Yeah,
Um, And I see it time and time again where the policy is created. Maybe they throw it in Chat GBT. They're like, oh, this is great. It will protect the business. But then they don't do it. Senior leadership's like, oh, that's a stupid policy. I'm going to go to my baseball game. Right.
right.
No, like as a company, you have the ability, as long as you are in compliance, to create policies that actually match your culture. And that is when you will have the best alignment, you'll have the most engaged teams. Um, and it really comes down to the employee handbook. So many times I hear companies think, oh, well, we're creating an employee handbook and employees aren't even going to read it. They probably won't, let's be honest. But the employee handbook has so much more power than just giving that information to an employee. What it does is it creates a guidebook for the employer to be able to stay consistent. And
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest benefit of that handbook.
Yeah, it really, like you're saying, it's an accountability tool for leadership as well to say, all right,
Yeah,
here's what we're promising you as an experience or
exactly.
what have you, and to then to hold yourself to that. Yeah, I think that's an important piece of it, obviously too. And again, like you're saying, and I've seen that too, right? Where it's like, well, I can go, I could go play golf now, right? Like my
Exactly.
stuff is done, but yeah, so that's interesting, and I think that's another dynamic that, just the work from home culture that's been created now, um, is something that plays in because there's certain people that they will only apply for remote positions, right? And then some of these hybrid positions that, yeah, it becomes difficult about how do you balance that. And let's say you're one of these companies that you're requiring people to be in 3 days a week, and then your senior management has to be in maybe 2 days a week, and then what if those days don't align, so you're really only getting one day with the person that you report to during the week, or two, or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
you can quickly see how people would feel alienated within their own role or within their own company, and that's not a
Yeah.
culture that you really want to create. But then the flip side,
Well,
though, too, is
yeah.
you've got people that if they do have that ability to be remote and put their kids on the bus in the morning or get them off the bus or get them to soccer practice, right? I'm speaking from personal experience here.
Yeah.
People like that. And so it's like, and I know plenty of people that work remotely and stuff, and they
Yeah.
get large pieces of things done during the day, go do other things that other priorities they have, family or what have you. And then after dinner, kind of there's a little bit of lull before, it's time to go to bed or whatever. And then they'll bang out a few emails and kind of get the day, started for tomorrow and get ahead of things.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
why shouldn't, if somebody has the ability to do that, why not let them pick and choose the flexibility of their work schedule, like you're saying, right? And
Yeah.
again, as long as if the performance is there, then hey, that's somebody that you just stay out of their way and you just make sure they're
Right.
happy in every other aspect, right? But
Right.
yeah, so
Well,
that's
and
that's
even
been.
with well, and Chris, what you said reminded me a lot too of, a lot of times businesses will say, well, what are our competitors doing or what are other businesses doing? And then they want to enforce policies or make policies around the trend. And I encourage people to think again, like what you just talked about. Well, what makes sense for your business though? Like, what do you actually want your business to be like? Because there's so many great remote employees, and if you have a workplace that really thrives being remote, then you're going to have that group of people available. And if you're an in-person type company where that's the most important thing, don't try and push like, oh, well, we're not going to get talent if we don't have a remote work policy. It's like, no, you still will, but if you're advertising and it's in person, you're going to get people that want to be in person because there's also people that want that. There's so many people in the world. And so I love what you said. It's don't try to keep up with the Jones. Like,
Yeah,
just look at
totally.
yourself. Think about what are your values and how can you make that policy true to your culture and your goals and your mission.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. um Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about. We got about 20 minutes left now. So I do want to get to, I think, what's going to be kind of the most interesting part of our discussion. Not that what we've covered so far hasn't been interesting. Sorry. I'll think of a better way to phrase that. But wanted to talk now about AI and the
Yeah.
future of HR and what that looks like. So AI obviously is something that has been on the scene, and I think is something that's been largely adopted by most of us, at least to some degree, at this particular point in time. And so what I'm curious about is where does it actually help HR teams today, and where is it maybe like, all right, let's pump the brakes on this?
Yeah. Well, pumping the brakes, the first thing that comes to mind is when you are solely relying on AI tools to screen the resumes coming in and handle your recruiting. I think a lot
Mm,
of times candidates get missed, and people don't have the best experience when you're relying on AI to do that part of the task.
hmm.
But where AI is really great is when you use it as a tool to help you. And so with recruiting specifically, once you have your job post put together and you are getting ready to advertise it, I personally like to take that job post and put it in AI and say, can you help me identify any unconscious bias words or areas that are popping up in this job post? Because I, as a human, I will work really hard to not be biased, but we're human. And so unconscious bias pops up, and we have to actively work to take that out of what we're doing. And AI, they don't have the feelings that we do. They are going to call it out. It's going to pull out exactly where any type of bias might be showing up. And then you can actively correct it before you go live, which I think also helps just the diverse candidate pool be attracted to your job post. And you get more diversity in the candidates that are actually applying for your role that way.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that. And you're right. Yeah, it's AI is a machine. It's a robot, right? So
Yeah,
it's going to strip some of that away. I remember actually when we were recording a month ago, we talked a little bit about how I think I and you can maybe tell the story better than I can. I think you know where I'm going with this,
I
but
know where
like
you're going. Yeah.
you put in there something about give me feedback on my career path and that type of thing, and then anyways, you tell it better than I did. So please share that story again.
Yeah. I think so. AI is one of the best accountability partners, if you ask me. Um,
Yep,
and the more you use it, the more it gets to know you. And so I remember exactly what this conversation was about. It was when I put into AI and I asked ChatGPT, based on what you know about me, what do you think I have to work on? What areas of improvement can I make? And it was extremely accurate, gave me feedback that I have not been able to get from other people. And it helped me see those blind spots that I'm not able to see without help from outside. And a lot of times, the people around you, they see your intention and they see, the good that you do. And so they don't want to hurt your feelings by giving you some of those hard areas that could be worked on. And
totally.
that's where AI is the best accountability partner, because it's like, I would love to tell you what you can work on.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think AI is also really great at then helping you come up with a plan. And I think it just works best when you use it as that tool to help guide you. You just don't trust it to be a know all. Like, you can't say, make me a plan and then follow that precisely without
cut
looking
and paste.
elsewhere, bringing, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
no.
But yeah, you can use it to give you framework and to help you find the things that you can't see.
Right, right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then you can kind of drill down on some of the nuance and make it, more of your own, make it more human, I guess, maybe.
Yep,
Would
exactly.
yeah.
It's a great way to put it.
So what are a couple ways, or maybe the top way that you've seen that AI can save time for HR teams without necessarily
Yeah.
creating more complexity or more risk?
Yeah. I think one of my favorite areas that I've been using AI is actually with learning and development, specifically around training videos and like onboarding and the experience that you're trying to create. I don't know how many HR people I've talked to where they're like, oh, this next year when we have time, we're going to make these really great videos that bring out our culture, and it's always something that gets pushed because before AI, making a video would take a week plus. You'd have to come up with the script, create time to record, edit, bring in outside help, get leadership involved, all these things. One of the programs that I like using is called Synthesia. And I love it because you can actually put in your script and you can have different avatars and different backgrounds. You can even add screenshots and screen recordings and things like that. And it will put this video together for you that then you can give to employees that walks them through how to do their time card, how to look at their pay stub, just all these little things that in the past would have been more of a hurdle, and now you can make that video in usually under 30 minutes, which is it just blows my mind, and it makes
Yeah.
those wish items a possibility.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen that. I mean, obviously, in my lane in benefits, we've seen that
Yeah.
with benefit education and communication, and particularly where we've put in, something that's different than just your traditional insurance program, where we've got medical management or we've got a specialty medication thing. We've put together these videos that helps people kind of understand what this is, if there's an extra
Yeah.
step or something like that, but kind of how this is to their benefit, yeah, it's been hugely helpful. And we've been doing videos for a long time, but now being able to leverage HR as you or HR, AI, all these acronyms, right? We got
Yeah.
but yeah, we've had a lot of success with doing that over the years, and that's only helped even further with HI to create those
Yeah.
scripts and some of those videos and such. So yeah, it's really not as daunting or as difficult to do as I think people think, because again, it's a rather new technology compared to, you're right, 5 6 years ago, 7 years ago or longer. It that would have required that lift. It would have required more time, bringing in contractors, bringing in
Yeah.
somebody to help with the editing
Expensive.
and different things. Yeah, well, yeah, not only time consuming, but then there's expense there. Whereas now, it's the barrier to entry is much less from a time as well as a money investment perspective. So,
Yeah, exactly.
um, uh, so what are some mistakes that you see companies making when they're trying to adopt AI tools perhaps too quickly?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's a little bit too much trust that's placed in AI. And so people will use AI to create a document or a policy or something like that, and they'll just call it good. They're like, yeah, this sounds good, so it must be right. Um, and I think that's the same, people in general, if we like the way something sounds, we usually believe it, but that doesn't always mean it's true. And so just being able to have a knowledge expert that can really tell the difference in, is this accurate or does it just sound good? Right? Because
Mm,
those are two different things.
yeah.
Um, yeah. And I also think that, I still see folks will they will put confidential information into AI systems. And you just need to be really careful because that intellectual property is no longer private when you do that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so just making sure that the information you're putting in is still protected, so remove names, remove numbers, remove any confidential information that you wouldn't want the world to know. Use it more as a hypothetical coach, and then do your own work to make sure that that document or whatever you're working on is created correctly and protecting that information that's in there.
Yeah, indeed. That's a really important call out, and I hadn't heard about that, but I could see how, somebody would be, just wanting to take a shortcut, and not realizing, and then they put some. I always think about PHI, personal health or identifiers,
Yeah.
which would be a HIPAA violation, right? So yeah, you could get yourself in hot water in a hurry, by just trying to, again, just take a shortcut basically.
Yeah.
So well, cool. Um, yeah, I think well, unless, is there anything else you wanted to add about HR? I was going to shift gears into kind of more 2026 readiness, and then we can start to wrap up here in the next 10 minutes. So anything else you would want to add about AI and how HR teams can leverage that, or anything along those lines?
I think last words of wisdom on that I have, if we want to call them words of wisdom, I feel like I'm always learning.
They
Um,
are. No, that's you.
yeah, I would just say embrace everything with curiosity. Don't just automatically assume it's going to be correct or good, but don't be afraid to also learn about it and try it. And just ask questions and really be curious about all the different systems that are out there. I think the more curious that you are with a topic, the more creative you can also be. And then you can get further in whatever you're trying to do by approaching it that way.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Be curious. I love that. All right. Well, as we start to look at, we've touched on 2026 readiness and things like that already in a few different ways. But so going back to kind of where we open things up, what would be maybe a top three of things that you would suggest as kind of like an HR health check for a growing organization? What would be maybe the top three things that companies should be reviewing right now?
Yeah, so PFML updated the minimum number of employees for job protection and support to 25 instead of 50. And so in Washington state, I think it's important for businesses that have under 50 employees to be looking at what their leave protection and support look like to make sure that they are in compliance with PFML, as that is going to be more strict now than the traditional FMLA.
Mm,
The other area that I think is really important, which we've already talked a little bit about, but it's again exemption thresholds and salaries. Looking at your compensation, pay transparency on job posts. Even if you're only a company of 5 employees and you're not required to post that pay range, candidates, it's proven, are less likely to even apply. So you are shrinking your, talent pool by not sharing transparently what that compensation range is going to be.
hmm.
So just get ahead of it. It it shouldn't be something that we're scared of anymore. I think that it's something you can talk about and look at. And if you are scared, um, ask for help from an expert that can take a look at it and then help you feel really confident in the way you are paying people and what your strategy is and how it's aligned to your business. Um, and then the third thing, of course, is just making sure that your contract workers and your employees are treated in the way that they're supposed to be treated.
Mm,
Um, and then a fourth one that is also top of mind is the retirement change that's coming. That's going to be starting this next year. And so if you're currently not offering a plan, I would really encourage small businesses. There's so many tax advantages to starting a retirement plan, let alone it just also helps your employees with engagement and retention. It might sound costly, but I think there's so much more benefit that I like to think of retirement plans, which is funny because they are, but I like to think of them as an investment.
what a
Investment in your
novel
business,
concept.
right? I know.
Yeah.
They're so often viewed as an expense. And, I only have, I have 3 employees. I'm actually made some offers and I'm getting ready to hire again. And I've been offering a retirement plan for almost a whole year now, as a new business. And I give a company match. And, um, you know, it's a small business, I'm growing, there's all of those levers that go into it, but putting people first and looking at how can I financially use my dollars to have a strategic plan with my people and my goals for my business. And retirement plan is actually one of those ways you can do that. So,
Yeah. Indeed. Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So what if you've got perhaps a client or a business well, what's I guess maybe one piece of advice that you would give to a business owner or somebody a leader who feels like they're behind in some of these areas? What would that be?
yeah. I would say surround yourself with a good partner that is able to help you just back up and look at it from a different lens. A lot of times, business owners have given their business everything.
Yep.
Their time, all of their money, all of their tears, everything that goes into it. And it gets muddy. It's hard to like see any of those other pieces of it. And so often having someone else that can come in and just help you and be your partner. It doesn't have to be a negative process. I know we like to make it fun. A lot of our meetings include laughter and smiling because it is about being that true partner. It's not about saying you did this wrong. It's about saying, okay, well, here's how we can shift gears. Here's why we need to work this way, right? So I think that'd be my biggest piece of advice is just trust in the experts in those areas to help your business. I know if I need something done, if I need bookkeeping, I have a bookkeeper. I don't do those pieces. I know HR. You don't want me touching your books. And the same goes for computers. I work with an IT professional. Um, I've grown up with computers. I know how to operate them. I can do quite a bit, but that doesn't mean I know enough to want my business to depend on my knowledge for that
Right.
area.
Yeah. You don't want to DIY your IT challenges or what have you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. All right, well, cool. Well, hey, we're starting to come close to time here. I just kind of had one other question, and then if you've got any kind of parting shots you want to share too. But what's maybe one question, and maybe this kind of dovetails off of what I just asked you, but what's one question that every employer should be asking of their HR team right now? So the reason I'm asking this is I'm kind of thinking ahead, like most of the people on here, I imagine, are going to be HR professionals because they want to learn from the best. They want to learn from the teacher, the goat. Uh, and so, if their employers come to the, anyways, I'm just kind of trying to preempt what might be coming from leadership to somebody in HR. What's one question that those employers should be asking their HR team as we kick off 2026 here?
Oh, this is so powerful. And I have two different questions that I feel like are very opposite directions. One, if employers are listening and they have HR teams and they're like, I wonder what I could ask my HR person. I would ask your HR team, what can leadership be doing to better align with HR and help HR function better within the organization?
Wow.
I think that would be an amazing question to ask your HR team, especially
Yeah.
if you're open to the feedback.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And the other question that I find really helpful is just asking, what is our HR strategy and how is it aligned to directly support the mission, vision, and values of the organization?
Mm,
What are we really doing to strategically align our people, which is the biggest part of our company, with what we're trying to achieve?
yeah. Yeah, that I love both of those. Those are
Yeah.
excellent. And I think in both cases, one is I think it empowers HR, which is something that I think everybody here today wants to see. And I think the other thing too is I always find this, like, when I created our mission here at GBS, which is to build 21st century health plans that eliminate employee out-of-pocket expenses, guiding them to higher quality health care. That informs every decision that we make, right? Whether that's looking at
Yes.
vendors, whether it's looking at how we're aligning with clients and onboarding them, or whatever the case is. But if you can always drive it back to the mission, vision, values, as you just said, that I think is because you can create alignment. I mean, again, it's kind of like we're talking about the handbooks and stuff.
Yeah.
If you can drive it back to that's our guiding principle here. The decisions then, even if they might seem difficult in the beginning, they become a little bit easier when it's like, how does what we're doing here in this decision support the overall,
Exactly.
that. So I love that. I don't think there's a better
Yeah.
way to end this. Cheyanne, thank you so much for being on today. It's been so great. I would love to have you come back sometime. And again, just thank you so much for being on with me today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Chris. This has been amazing. And if it was not for you, I would not be here. I would never even think to do a LinkedIn Live. And so thank you for reaching out, encouraging me, and making this such a positive experience.
Oh, shucks. All right. Well, yes, you're definitely coming back then now. Jeez. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, who joined us today. And if you haven't connected with her, that's Cheyanne Schaefer. She's the president and CEO of Cascade HR, among many other things. But yes, again, thank you, Cheyanne. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everybody.